Hello and welcome again to another episode of the Bitcoin News Show. I am your host, Vortex, and you guys are right here on the World Crypto Network YouTube channel, one of the best places to find news and information about cryptocurrencies. We got a great show for you guys tonight. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin's all-time highs, how R3 admits defeat, and PBOC's new backed currency, digital currency. So we're going to see how that all competes with Bitcoin. So we have a great panelist tonight, guys. We have tons of awesome panels. We got the smartest people in Bitcoin right here. We'll just go down the line real quick first. So Andrew DeSantis, thanks for joining us. How are you, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks so much for joining us. We got Ansel from bitcoinandmarkets.com. How you doing, Ansel?
What's up, guys?
Yeah. And we got Blake Anderson, which is Bitcoin Blake on Twitter.
Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Awesome. Nice to have you again. Got Gabriel Devine joining us.
Hey, it's amazing to be back, but I would also like to correct you, Vortex. World Crypto Network is the best place. Not one of the best. It's the best place on YouTube to get information about crypto monies.
That's correct. My bad. That's totally true, Gabriel. So thank you for correcting us. And then we got Edward, also known as Renegade Investor, joining us. How you doing, Edward?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on again.
Awesome. And tonight's special guest, ladies and gentlemen, we have the great, the famous Mr. Samson Mow, formerly of BTCC. How you doing, Samson?
Good. Thanks for having me on the show, Vortex.
Woo! Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, man. We've been looking forward to it for a while, especially everybody here at the WCN. I know we're all fans of your tweets. I know for sure I am. So really glad to have you here on the show tonight. Well, I think what we'll do is just ask you a couple of quick questions and then kind of get right into the news topic. So just the first question, if you could just let us all know, how did you first get introduced to Bitcoin?
Well, I first read about it actually on TechCrunch, and then I think they did a piece on mining, and I got interested in mining Bitcoin. So I actually set up on Slush Pool, I think it's 2013 or so. But I didn't really get into it until I joined BTCC with Bobby. So I was at his house for a Christmas party, and he showed me some apps from BTC China at the time. And I said, if you want, I can help you out with some of these things. So I joined as an advisor. And then from there, it just kept on going on and further down and down the rabbit hole.
Down and down we go. That is for sure. You can definitely go all the way down on Bitcoin. Like, I just love the amount of information that you can really take it to with the different levels of mining and wallets, and it's just great. So you are definitely one of the few people, I think, in this world, maybe all these panelists here, that really understand Bitcoin in its fine details. So I'm really glad to have you on the show to talk about that. So let me just ask you this then, Samson. You recently left BTCC, and so just wondering, what was the decision process with regard to leaving BTCC, and what are you going to mostly be up to now?
Well, right now, for the time being, I'm Bitcoin retired, so I can just spend my time making memes and talking stuff on Twitter. But the decision is mostly, I plan to move back to Canada. So it was actually made quite a while back. So I gave a lot of time and notice to Bobby. And I was actually moved back before the new year, December 20th, I was actually back in Canada.
Are you out of Toronto?
In Victoria, actually, in Canada. But it has nothing to do with the PBOC or anything.
Sure, Samson. Sure. Blink twice if that's not true. No, sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, but it's just a pretty straightforward decision, and I think it's hard to run the company remote, especially 140 people. So I was back here in December 20th, and I flew back on February.
You guys had 140 on staff?
Yeah, 140. 140.
Impressive.
Goddamn.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So,
I mean, compared to United States-based cryptocurrency companies that I would say are relatively have the same size, at least prestige-wise, they don't have anywhere near 140. 140 is a huge staff for a crypto for a Bitcoin company.
it's a decent size.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was actually back in Canada, but I was never adjusted to Pacific time. So I was still on China time for like 2 months. So that's kind of why I kind of expected I had to step down, because it's not going to work long term.
Yeah, once your
That
circadian
is-
rhythms start to really slide around, it makes it really, really, really tough to just, function and do a lot of the stuff that you like to do outside of just, getting those business deliverables. So yeah, I can appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
some crazy
straightforward
time.
answer. Straightforward answer.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is some amazing time difference. So you must have definitely got some sleepless nights there for a while until you finally were able to leave.
Yeah. Well, as a fall night off, till 7 a.m. every day.
I couldn't do it. So you're a better man than me, Samson. So very cool. Well, hopefully you can still stick around, like you said, like on Twitter, and give us your opinions of the goings on of Bitcoin. We definitely enjoy it. So don't leave us leave us hanging, Samson. So
Don't
I
worry,
think we can.
Roger needs
Awesome.
me. Roger needs me.
Exactly. We all need you, but definitely Roger needs you the most, I think, Samson. So very cool. So I
He's
think
gonna be
we can
very
get
disappointed.
So I think we can get into the first topics of the night here. So first topic is Bitcoin has reached all-time highs and is staying well above $1,000 for the longest stretch in its history. What do we think? What do we think got us here in the first place, and how long will this bull run last? So we'll go with you first, Samson. What do you think?
Well, I think what got us here is the halving. So I think this increase should have been earlier, but due to a series of events, it's kind of delayed. But I think it's heavily to do with the halving and just the shortage of supply. A lot of OTC traders, you realize that there is actually a shortage of Bitcoin. And when there is a shortage, it drives up demand, and demand drives up price. I think it's just the beginning, though. I think my target for this year is at least, my lower bound is 2,000 for this year.
And I noticed the shortage. I used to be able to pull up Signal or Slack and get Bitcoin pretty quickly, just on like Web of Trust credit, I guess you could say. Like, I'll see you at the next conference. I'll give you cash then.
Yeah.
There's no Bitcoin right now. Not nearly as much as there used to be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't
I
realize
have heard
that.
of these OTC shortages, but go ahead, Samson.
Yeah, if people realize it, I think the price would go higher faster.
Just really quick, this isn't a topic, but just so I can get maybe just your quick opinion, Samson. What do you think about the ETF, and do you think it's going to launch on March 11th?
Well, I think some people don't like it, but I think the ETF is great. It lets a lot of people access Bitcoin, if not buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin. And I hope it does go through. And I think the chances are 50-50. It's just it's a hard one to call if it actually will go through, but I'm hopeful that it will.
Interesting. Very cool. All right. So let's go with the next panelist on, Bitcoin reaching all-time highs. We'll go with Gabriel D. Vine. What do you think?
I wasn't expecting to get called so soon. I definitely agree with Samson that the halvening is a lot of the fuel for the fire that we're seeing under the rocket to the moon. And as an aside, it's great to hear Samson say 50-50 on the ETF. That was my thought too, because the regulators are so incredibly opaque about their decision making and haven't given any signals at all. So it's super hard to make a call on it. But you're the first person other than me who has said, 50-50. But unlike you, I'm neutral on it. I don't know whether it's positive or negative, but I could definitely see it being positive for price in the short term. Anyways, and I actually have a question for you on your answer regarding the price, which is you said that reduction in supply increases demand.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just merely because people are seeing less? I mean, I don't really see. I see a reduction in supply is a reduction in supply, and that, of course, just changes this supply to demand ratio. But how do you see a reduction in supply directly affecting demand?
FOMO.
Yeah. So psychological, just trying to people missing out. Like, oh, now there's less than ever, so I better get in. Is that kind of what you meant?
It's that, but there's so many factors. There's also Venezuela, India, and people just kind of waking up to the fact that they need a safe haven, and they need some place to store their assets, because your assets can be obliterated. And I don't think a year ago this kind of thinking was even on anyone's mind. But as of 2016, we've seen that it is real, and it's getting more and more real, and that's definitely a huge factor in it.
Are you talking about like India and the cash type deal, or just the fact that you can be ransomed and have your identity crashed in like 5 minutes?
I think it's the demonetization, or just removing of bills from circulation. I think more and more countries are going to start doing it because it's to their benefit to do so.
Well, interesting. This is good. I have like 30 Bitcoin.star domains for foreign countries. And for each one that goes down, I can start a different site.
Exactly.
Yeah.
India is interesting because the cost of cash in India is sky high. It's very expensive to have cash, but cash has a lot of utility for those citizens. So when the government says this is too expensive, we're going to cut something that has so much utility for the individuals and citizens that are living here, it's kind of like, whoa, that's really pushing the bounds of one of the most authoritarian things that we've seen a government do in a wide sweep in recent history. It's very bizarre.
Absolutely, very strange. So we'll go with Edward from Edward Renegade Investor next. What do you think on the all-time highs?
So yeah, I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin right now. I've actually just made a video called 10 Reasons Why I Think Bitcoin Will Destroy All-Time Highs in 2017. But before that, what I think got us here, I definitely agree with Samson that the halvening was the biggest reason in 2016. And it's quite funny because the mainstream gets it wrong every time. That happened around the same time as Brexit. So all the mainstream thought it was Brexit was driving up the price when it was actually the halvening. And they're doing the same right now. They're saying everyone's scared of the Trump policies. That's why it's going up. So mainstream keep getting it wrong. I think there are so many reasons right now why Bitcoin price is looking bullish. And I think the biggest is the war on cash and demonetization, which I talked about in my latest video. And you've really got to look for the countries with the biggest debt to GDP for where this might happen next, because the more debt that a government has, the more likely they are to clamp down on cash payments in order to try and capture as much tax revenue as possible. And a lot of the other reasons, like institutional investment is picking up. You've also got the gold price parity, which I think is kicking off right now. Jim Rickers came out yesterday talking down Bitcoin and talking up gold. So this is really kicking off right now. And a lot of people, they always talk about how the gold price parity is not really a fair comparison. And to a certain degree, I agree with that, but it's a psychological event. If Bitcoin topples the gold price, it's going to be plastered all over the news, and that's going to be really bullish for raising awareness of Bitcoin in the in the face of gold. And you've also got hopefully Segwit, the demise of blockchain hype, China and Japan big right there right now. And yeah, there's literally I was making my video and it's 26 minutes and I didn't even list 6 of the reasons, which was the Greek debt crisis. You got the populist movement, Marine Le Pen, the succession movement, growth in India. And the only thing I'll say to people right now, there's going to be a lot of people new to Bitcoin, but just beware of the ETF announcement on the 11th of March, because if the ETF gets denied, then I think we're going to have a short-term price drop. And that's not a systemic problem, but the speculators will speculate on that without a doubt. So I don't give investment advice, but I would be slowly scaling in, but just be aware of that ETF announcement on the 11th of March. But if it's approved, I mean, we're going to destroy all-time highs if that's approved on the 11th of March.
To the moon, I think. To the moon if that thing gets approved. That's for sure.
Does anyone know anything more about Japan? Because that's a huge announcement. They want to make Bitcoin legal tender next month. Does anyone know anything more about that on the panel?
I haven't read that. Samson?
When was that announced?
I've read it, but that's about all I know.
Yeah, about a month ago. About a month ago. It's huge news. If so, I mean, that's a massive economy. I mean, geez.
It's been coming for a while.
We could definitely have that for.
It's been on the
economy growing with a bullet, that's for sure.
That's
one of these things.
Very interesting.
Want to move into Japan, so it's going to be a hotbed for traders, and it's also huge for merchants too. So Japan is definitely a big factor, like Renegade Investor said.
Yep, very, very interesting. So we'll see. We'll definitely have to do a topic on that, Gabriel, pretty soon. But we're going to go with Ansel next on the Bitcoin highs. And how long do we think this bull run's going to last, Ansel?
Well, I think this ETF, continuing on with what Edward said, this ETF I think is definitely like a buy the rumor, could be a sell the news sort of thing. So we could see quick and fast drop after it gets approved, but that won't last very long. I think by the end of the year, we're going to be, if it does get approved, we're going to be in the thousands, 2,000, 3,000, pick a number. It could go really, really high, higher than any of us expect, 10,000 even before it comes back down. I think the main driver between like the end of 2015 all the way till today has been this halvening. People were starting to price in the halvening, but the scaling debate kind of kept it tempered. A lot of people wanted to FOMO into the halvening, but they might not have done that because, oh, this is happening. They might have bought Ethereum instead, right? So you have different things to go to. We were kind of like on a 200-day cycle where the pressure would build up and it would spike up, double the price, and then come back down and consolidate for a while. That might not be the case anymore. We might have finally figured out, it might have sunk into people that this is a store of value. And it doesn't really matter if you can buy your coffee with it, that, you're going to be in Venezuela or India or now Taiwan. I heard just recently you can't buy real estate, cars, or jewelry with cash. So there's a lot of these laws going around the world where you can't use cash anymore. And as people, they see Bitcoin for these high dollar purchases, like a $200,000 condo or something, or $500,000 condo, whatever the case is. That's where people, I think, are going to start coming in. And man, when those millionaires and billionaires start wanting to save in, sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Sky is the limit. I think we all agree here on, all the panelists agree here on that. Blake Anderson, what do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, this might be a little bit boring for people that are more, intimately familiar with how Bitcoin works and why. But I mean, we have 15 million coins out there. We have 5 million coins left. They're being minted to a total quantity of 21 million at a slowing rate until the year 2140. I mean, that's deflationary in and of itself. And then what we have, what that means, where the rubber meets the road with that is when demand for Bitcoin goes up. It's not like gold where you can go and you can mine some more. That pace of creation is set in stone, so that makes it an inelastic supply. So imagine if you're bungee jumping and the cord is inelastic, and if you don't die from the downtrend, it's going to whip up very, very fast. That's what makes for those visceral spikes up in Bitcoin, and it's always ratcheting towards increased value as that quantity goes down. So I think that the fundamentals that drive the price towards repeated deflationary spirals are what do this. And obviously, what's one of the biggest factors is what we already pointed out: the deflationary spiral is pushed the most by these block halvings and the supply actually going down. That, in concert with the demonetization of India, really triggered this hard deflationary spiral, which refers to an increase in the value and buying power of Bitcoin versus assets and other things. A deflationary spiral means that things are going down in terms of their cost relative to what we're talking about. So when Bitcoin's in a deflationary spiral, the value is increasing, which is kind of counterintuitive. Some people hear that mentioned and they're like, "What? Why is he talking about the opposite of what's happening?" But it's just kind of similar to negative rights. We're not talking about not having rights. You're talking about a very specific set of things that go on that maybe could have a better way of putting them. So I think that the fundamentals are the best thing to look at in terms of why is Bitcoin doing what it's doing, and then try to layer on top of that what's going on, nationally, locally, et cetera, to try to get a more micro view of where things are going to go.
It is interesting to have the halving kind of so close to the Indian denomination, because it's kind of like a 1-2. I mean, we see this halving, the supply go down, and then we see India do this thing, and we see what happens. Just horrible things, hundreds dead, a country devastated. So and then we see Bitcoin, it halves and it doubles in price, it gets better, more and more people are using it. So very interesting to have them both right next to each other. It's a really nice contrast for people to be able to see and help learn about Bitcoin, I think. So
I think that the price
cool.
the price doesn't follow the news, and people always think the other way around, right? That, oh, they look to the current topics, the current events to see what's driving the price. But I think fundamentals drive the price, and then the news tries to explain, hey, why is this price going up? Oh, it must be because India, right?
Definitely. And the news is so ephemeral, and they're so kind of horny over details that they miss sight of the fact that this entire thing is global, it's organic, a big machine moves slowly, and things like that.
Yep, absolutely. I think we can go with Andrew next on this topic. What do you think, Andrew?
Well, I would not counter Samson on the halvening thing, but I think that like a larger long-term trend is gonna start to be more evident over time. Like if I was looking in my Gmail right now, and if I look at 12/24/2016, Google searches for Bitcoin up 92% in the past week. 12/30, 71%. January 5th, 59%. February 23rd, up 21%. At 5 o'clock this morning, up 41%. And these searches for Bitcoin are important because, you know, you'll have news or you'll have RSS feeds or you'll have Twitter where people are shoving Bitcoin down people's throats. And like, I know that because I was one of the guys that used to shove Bitcoin down people's throats. But whenever people are actively searching for it, it tends to not be as much about the economics of it as it is general interest of the population, particularly with these numbers. And what I see happening is as nationalism in different countries becomes a thing, where you actually have people identifying as a member of a nation state, I see this drive towards decentralization. I've posted this bias of communication Harold Enos chart before that shows decentralization and nationalism as similar aspects of a certain type of society. And what I see is, you know, as we have more and more BuzzFeed type stuff coming out, really space bias media, stuff that is just there to take up word space and just get inside your head, you're going to see a natural reaction of the people that eventually grow sick of the BuzzFeed type things, and they're going to start going towards the Bitcoin type things. And whenever people have uncertainty and conflict happening within different nation states, they're going to try to find their way towards math, whether they realize it or not, or just pure logic. So I think long-term, what we're going to see is Bitcoin kind of counteracting with BuzzFeed. And I'm not unfairly picking on BuzzFeed, but I just kind of see them as literal opposites, and that Bitcoin, it takes, you know, 10 minutes to get into a block, and BuzzFeed, it takes 5 minutes to put an article on the site. Total polar opposites. And long-term, I think the halvening compounded with the fact that people that usually wouldn't get into Bitcoin, or people that could care less about the economic aspects, the political aspects, or the mathematical aspects, are going to naturally find themselves driven towards it, right? Or they're going to find themselves driven towards various scams that say that they are providing what Bitcoin provides.
Yep. I mean, it just, I don't think it really has hit people yet that there is only a finite supply of Bitcoin, and it's getting less and less and less available every day. So, you know, once people really, I think, wake up to this fact, it will be interesting to see how the market reacts. So very cool. So thanks so much, guys, for the answers on that topic. I think we'll move on to the next topic. But before we do, if everybody watching the show could share out the show, tweet out the show, Facebook out the show, let everybody know we're here talking Bitcoin. We're having a good time here. We got 122 viewers in the chat, so we have a great chat going on as well. So if you guys want to see us live, we would love to have you and interact with you in the chat. So I think we can move on to the next topic, which is pretty nice because it's a little vindication for me a little bit, and I think anybody else who didn't really trust R3 in the first place. But we'll go with this here. R3 recently admitted defeat by releasing a blog post saying that they no longer need a blockchain. Is this kind of proof that 2017 is the year of Bitcoin, not blockchain again? Samson, what do you think?
I think it's always been about Bitcoin, and then somehow people start talking about blockchain. But it's full circle. We're back to Bitcoin again. And I think R3 has always been kind of clueless for business, which is to get money from people that don't know about Bitcoin or blockchain and turn it into a company.
Yeah, real quick, Sam. So what did you think of the quality of the source code of Corda when it was released to the world?
I didn't really bother looking at it because I think all the private blockchain code is, it's really not that important. I don't even think any of these systems are meant to work over the internet. I think they probably have to be connected through a VPN or some private tunneling because they wouldn't survive on the internet.
I looked at it, and you didn't waste any time by not looking at it.
Dude, I have this really awesome script that I'm going to run with this dynamic, domain system thing. And this awesome script is going to move coins around on my computer. And you can connect to this awesome, repository of data on this ledger on my PC with my dynamic DNS address. And it's an altcoin, dude. It's super tenable. It's going to be awesome.
Yep. Can't wait to try it.
It's really strange. These people think that their blockchains are secure. Like, it just clearly they don't understand proof of work. So we'll go with Blake next on this. What do you think about R3 admitting defeat?
I don't know. I think that if I was working there, we could have strung this out a lot longer. Defeat would have been pushed way back. We could have been talking about game theory like Vitalik. We could have been going for Gusto and
smart contracts.
Shame on them for their lack of creativity. I mean, if you're going to do something, be the best at it. And, already drying up with your ideas. I mean, you can go on the forums and steal ideas from people like, in certain altcoiners and pumpers. And, maybe in another community, this would have been a pretty good long jump. But shame on them for their short run.
Yeah, and I think somebody, admitted that or somebody tweeted when I tweeted out that R3 admitted defeat, somebody tweeted, I think, something about they should be sued for fraud because that was their entire business premise, right? Was to create a private blockchain.
Somebody said they raised $100 million in capital to create a private blockchain. Then they came out with an official statement, allegedly. I'm not saying that I know this for sure, but allegedly they came with an official statement that said, we don't need one. And I would say, well, that directly, then it's time to go and give that money back. So that comment that they should be sued for fraud is like, that's got some teeth on that comment. So I thought
I agree. There's some real truth to that. So very interesting. Well, we'll go with Ansel next. What do you think? R3 admitting defeat.
I think that a lot of us saw this coming, and to me, I kind of want to take it as a good opportunity to educate people. Like, how did some of us know or say this from the beginning that blockchain all the things is wrong, right? And I think that this is a big hit against blockchain all the things and dApps in general, a lot of dApps, and that's all I have to say.
All right, short and sweet, man. That's an attack on the blockchain of all things, because blockchain can cure cancer and bring back your dead grandfather. All right, let's go with Gabriel Devine next. What do you think, man?
I'd like to cede my position in line to Andrew and hear what he has to say first, and then I'll comment after.
Awesome. Okay, Andrew, what do you think, man?
I have a couple thoughts. So first of all, in their blog post, while we're almost certainly guilty of slipping into the semantics trap now and again, we've said from the beginning that Corda is a distributed ledger platform, not a traditional blockchain platform. It was never designed to be one. I was in the room when we made the distributed ledger meme a year and a half ago, 6-7 months after R3 raised. It wasn't even a freaking word. I own all the distributed ledger domains. You're playing a game that I invented. So chill the hell out. It was a freaking blockchain deal because I was correcting R3 on how they were spelling it. It's block space chain. It's not a single word. Blockchain is a company. Block space chain is a conceptual thing that happens to exist whenever you have Bitcoin or any other distributed system where you can generate the keys yourself and achieve consensus through some sort of game theory. Second of all, we launched the 21 beta at the consensus conference on stage with the R3 guys, where they literally attacked our launch as though it was nothing, as though we had not accomplished anything. And I still have yet to see anybody put out anything with payment channels. There's payment channel stuff, but it's something that's relatively unused by the mainstream, developer community. And it's something that's very easy to use, and that you put a decorator over a function and you're good to go. So R3 literally has been, they know what Bitcoin is and they ignore what Bitcoin is. And that's possibly the most irritating thing whenever you're attacked on Twitter by thousands of people over correcting people about blockchain related stuff. And you have R3 blocking you on the day that they launch Corda whenever you review their code, and they're not putting anything out that's useful. And it's not just that, it's the foundations. It's whenever I build software, or whenever I look at someone else's software and I correct them or praise them on what they've done, I try to look at the foundations of their software and I try to see why they did something. And in the freaking Corda code, it's just a bunch of Java written by Mike. And the Java code, like, if you are serious about actually doing something with it, look up the Oracle Google lawsuit and realize that, like, if you play within Oracle's game, they will sue you the moment your software becomes useful, like, at all.
They are quite litigious in that regard.
They would literally, there would be an Oracle mining fee if we were to do Bitcoin in Java. There would be an Oracle mining fee, or there would be an intense attack by Oracle against people using Java code without giving them a cut if there was actually value being produced by Java code. And anyone that writes code eventually realizes this, or their IQ is below a certain threshold. They realize, I put a lot of work into this, but I don't actually own this. With C code, with anything based on C, you own what you develop. So if you write in Python and it's over C, you own what you develop. When you write in Java, Oracle takes a cut in that they can literally just sue you if they don't like you and create uncertainty for your users. And by setting up...
Mike's gonna announce the Corda project has failed and he's gonna join Oracle.
It would be full circle because he started at Google, but like you know, R3, it is what it is. We know what it is. It's the banks coming together, trying to put in their best effort to knock off Bitcoin, and then now it's a backtrack of the marketing team. And whenever you have competing forces within a conglomerate type deal, or whatever you want to call this, there's a word for Japanese companies that basically means all the major companies invested in like a tinier company, and they're not the same company.
The Zaibatsu.
This is what that was, and it has the creativity of a bank, and that's all that it is. And it's I don't even want to talk about it anymore after this because they're just not worth it. It's $100 million of made up money, first of all, because they all invested money that came from banks into something that's supposed to compete with Bitcoin. And the confusion there and just what it is and what it always was intended to be, I'm not surprised by any of it. And I'm glad that they're changing terms, because all of that work that they put into blockchain, which, do not get me wrong, blockchain would be a thing if we had 10 years of consistent development into blockchain as a counter to Bitcoin. But whenever you start changing the terms, and whenever you start changing the company structure and the development team structure of what you're doing, or if you change the language to counter the fact that it was written in Java, you reset the clock on that 10-year run, and all the work just out, bye. And this is something that they don't realize. Like, this is from an industry that still uses COBOL. So I'm literally not surprised. And I think it will not die. And I think it will continue to be a freaking golem in our lives, but it's whatever.
So you're saying you can't build the infrastructure of a giant skyscraper with one, set of logic and reason, and then be like, oh, we're just going to pivot to another and then act like it's okay.
Yeah. Even if you have bad logic, you need to be consistent with your bad logic. Like, it's okay that they're evil relative to Bitcoin, in my opinion, but it's not okay. Like, so we knew they were bad actors, but we didn't kind of realize that they were negligent bad actors. Like, you're supposed to do 10 years of being evil consistently and go in a certain direction, or you're never gonna catch wind. So I just don't. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, Andrew. I'm sorry, Andrew, but I'm going to have to keep talking about R3 for a little while longer, if only to troll them, because this is they for 2 years, man, they brought on this blockchain crap, and I'm going to troll them for at least 2 years. But go ahead. Anybody else who has something to say?
Well, they've been around since 2003, I think. They've been around before blockchain, so this was just a foray into the hype, so they could raise some more money.
Nice.
I had some insiders from the blockchain thing message me whenever the price started to rise, and they were like, don't worry about the blockchain companies. They just needed something to, like, talk about while they were raising their next round. And now all these developers are going to come into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's going to have this huge development awakening. And I think they're in for a rude awakening, because none of their skills are going to transfer over. Like, not just language wise, but just the way you have to think to acknowledge that Bitcoin exists and then choose to sit at a desk and write Java code all day. The only guy that can do it is Mike. And I don't know how long Mike can do it.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's not going to work. It's just not going to transfer over like the same news and information. But Gabriel, go ahead.
I have not heard that before. That's really interesting perspective. That this whole idea of R3 and all these blockchain companies are training the next wave of Bitcoin developers. Maybe not, because it's the entirely opposite philosophy. That's really interesting. I love how Andrew called it a golem, because that's kind of a very, very good corollary to the zombie banks. The zombie banks creating a flesh golem. So it's not even the R3 isn't even animated. It's not even undead. It's just animated. But it's this construct, as opposed to the undead quality of the banks that are brains. Give me debt. That's really interesting. I just kind of want to point out that on top of everything else, I don't necessarily agree that it's like, R3 has failed. Obviously, the marketing department failed, but they just basically are now admitting what we've been saying all along, which is this is all empty marketing, and they won't be able to use a blockchain to do what they're saying they want to do. And now it's kind of the resolution of that, where the marketing department admits that it was all bullshit. But then, the interesting thing is the level of fraud is really deep here. We've got Mike Hearn, who was behind the only accidental hard fork in Bitcoin, that once the ecosystem in 6 hours came together and showed the world that Bitcoin was more than code, was more than game theory. It was human beings that believe in a philosophy, that believe in a vision for the world and helping the world, and they donated their time to get things back on track in like an hour. Once that and the collapse of Silk Road, or the seizure of Silk Road six months later, once neither of those things affected Bitcoin and Bitcoin just trundled right on, that was such a moment for the world to see that Bitcoin was not this little project. Bitcoin is a movement. And
whenever Silk Road didn't kill Bitcoin, that's when the VCs got serious about Bitcoin.
Yeah, because it was like, oh, this isn't just a flash in the pan. This isn't a crutch for Bitcoin. Like, oh, well, Bitcoin's only use is this thing, and then if it doesn't have that, it's just going to fade away. And it proved all the really philosophers in the space talking about the vision behind Bitcoin and the potential. It proved them right when Bitcoin, it was just barely a blip. But I'd just like to point out that the level of fraud is really multi-pronged. You got Mike Hearn behind it, who's, in my opinion, very subjectively speaking, I don't have any evidence for this, but it's obviously a state actor who's completely compromised, certainly a GCHQ asset behind it. They're even going so far as to scam players in the Bitcoin space, crypto players like Peter Todd. They hired, quote unquote, Peter Todd to do review of their code. He did all the work and they stiffed him. They owe him like 14 grand or something. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but they, in addition to scamming all these banks, scamming the entire public with their fake marketing campaign, they also stiffed Peter Todd.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's low.
That's really bad.
It's really low. It's like kind of disgusting. Like, really, guys, you needed to like stiff Peter Todd out of 14 grand.
I've actually never been paid by a company that I've vetted their stuff and come to negative conclusions. So I don't know how common or uncommon that is, but
that's just weak. They're just so weak that that's just, come on, guys. Really? At least pretend that you're professionals or some shit. This is just such crap. I'm really it's really fun to see the banks falling off the project, and it's very telling to see which human beings are at the banks that are still in the project, which human beings are actually making that decision to stick with R3 despite the repeated failures, missing deadlines, and lack of deliverables. It's really fun to see that, okay, so this is this human being that has probably some back-end deal here and there. I mean, it's just so corrupt.
Well, you know who I don't think? So Mike Hearn, by the way, he isn't dumb by any means. I'll give him that. I talked really negative about his code, but like Lighthouse, no one is still using, there's still no one using the opcodes that he used to build Lighthouse out. And it's something that I have like on the back burner to like try and finish up or port away from Java. But what I guess irks me about Mike is he knows what Bitcoin is, and he used the New York Times to do what he did, and he knew what he was doing, and we all knew what he did when he did it. But also, I guess I've been doing a lot of digging lately. I was telling them earlier that I stopped writing defensive security software and I started writing offensive security software. So I've been basically writing malware for the last week just to get in the mind state of the people writing malware. And I've been doing a bunch of digging and a bunch of research. And every time I find a topic and I want to get to the bottom of it, and I start pulling out all the parts that don't make sense, underneath Goldman Sachs pops up every single time. And I think they're either going to do something of their own, or they finally realize that they're not going to shut Bitcoin down and they're quietly gathering their coin. So I would say the people staying at R3 right now, because it is a consortium, are probably not like the ones tied to Goldman Sachs. Even though Circle bounced, I still think that they're going to be a substantial part of the Bitcoin ecosystem for a while.
Yep. And I think that anybody staying at R3 now is, really at this point, probably who's actually into Bitcoin is going to leave soon, right? And if they're not going to leave soon, then the only people that are going to be remaining at R3 is just people who don't care, right? Who, just like you said, Andrew, want to go to work, program Java all day and go home. Like that's all they want to do. So
I do have to ask this because I worked at a company. Well, I worked with a co-founder of a company that's name meant nothing. Do we know what R3 stands for? Like, does it mean anything? Because whenever I was with V3 had absolutely no meaning. So well, R3 CEV.
Nothing I know of.
R3 like, CEV, right?
Righteous to the third power, collectivist, eugenics center.
Closed eye visuals.
I just have to ask, just because.
I've never heard of it. I looked on their website a couple times. I couldn't find it.
I didn't get.
So it's one of those names that means absolutely nothing, and they just wanted a short URL or something.
Well, you look at the whole name. It's R3CEV, right? So it's like receive banks money.
Oh no, they're using leet speak. No,
I don't know.
No way. I don't believe
God,
it's
receive. Oh my God, R3CEV, receive.
If that's what it really is, that would be sad.
But they don't use the 3 in the CEV. Oh my God, it can't be that bad. Oh, okay.
I hope not. But
it's not that complex.
We'll move on.
R3 just stands for
we got to get
wrecked.
Yeah, exactly. Wrecked. We got to ask Edward his opinion before we move on to the next topic. Edward, what do you think about R3, man?
So I actually did a tweet. I think it was during last week, and it was actually my second biggest retweet of all time. So I think it really resonated with people, and that is that I wrote blockchain, as in blockchain in commas, is the embodiment of emotional denial, just so bankers don't have to admit their industry theoretically ended in 2009. And what I meant by that was their industry hasn't technically ended, but it has ended in the way it used to operate. So regardless of where we go from here, we are not going back to a world that is completely dominated and controlled by a centralized financial institution. That entire paradigm ended in 2009. And another reason I just want to say here is that one of the first videos I ever made on my YouTube channel was 9 reasons why Bitcoin will outcompete private blockchains. And the biggest one was trust. Like, why, after 2009, with Bitcoin catching on, why would you want to reintroduce an intermediary when you don't need one. It makes absolutely no sense. There's no economic incentive to do it when Bitcoin has been providing a secure, stable platform for the last 7 years. And the more and more longevity that Bitcoin has and the Lindy effect kicks in, there's no reason to reintroduce a third party and trust back into your transactions. And the other point I really want to make here, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with Paul Joseph Watson here, but regardless of whether you agree with his politics and the sort of conservative narrative that he's pushing, personally, I really like the guy. But he said this week, he's really sort of winding up the left by saying that conservatism is the new counterculture, which obviously historically, like from the 60s onwards, it was a left that was a counterculture to the right in terms of the free speech movement and liberty. But now they're saying it's conservatism. But that's the way people need to view Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin is the counterculture to the existing financial system. It's a completely different way of doing things where it's based on trust rather than having this corrupted, fraudulent, centralized institutions between us and the people we want to send our money to. And that is why it's going to be so powerful, because Bitcoin is the counterculture to the absolutely horrendous culture we have in the existing financial system. And like Simon Dixon said, and I think Gabriel Devine mentioned this earlier, is that Bitcoin is not just a technology, it's also a movement. And that's why it's so powerful. Nobody's going to be passionate about getting behind R3CV or working to increase the bank's bottom line. So I think looking at Bitcoin as the counterculture really is why it's going to succeed over these private blockchains.
I also wanted to say Paul Joseph Watson has gigantic balls in terms of putting his opinion out there repeatedly, no matter what happens. And I think that journalists need to start being more like that, because the people that are like, oh, I'm going to be non-biased and I'm going to pretend like I'm non-biased, and they deliver biased journalism. I think that owning your bias is an important thing, and expressing what you feel is important. And I think that Paul Joseph Watson is a titan in that regard, even if somebody doesn't agree with everything that he says.
Exactly. I mean, he still says it with 100% conviction, 100% honesty, and 100% truth. Really, in my opinion, everything that guy says, like, everybody needs to follow that guy on Twitter, or at least YouTube for sure. So Bitcoin really is this more than a program. It is a movement. This is a counterculture. This is something that would want to get behind if it was a corporation or if it was a company. Because as Edward said, nobody wants to help R3. Nobody's passionate about increasing R3's bottom line. And I don't care what company you work for, you just can't be passionate about really increasing its bottom line, like as much as you can for a movement that can help change the entire planet for the better.
So whenever I want to figure out what somebody's actually trying to do, I go to the U.S. trademark database and I pull up what they've registered their marketing words as. So Corda for R3 is a computer program for use in distributed ledger technology, computer program for facilitating electronic distributed ledger platform transactions via telecommunication systems, data communication systems, or global networks. Distributed ledger platform software for use in processing financial transactions, electronic funds transfer, and currency conversion. Distributed ledger platform technology for use in e-commerce or online marketplaces to allow users to perform electronic transactions via a global computer or mobile device network. Mobile computer program for use in identity management. They just literally try to shove as many keywords in there and start all their sentences with distributed ledger. And this was filed on
that's what it sounds like.
2016. I think Corda means block rope, like a rope of blocks, or a cord of blocks instead of a chain. I think that's what they were trying to do there.
That is sad. That is sad. Okay.
They've got a block pile. They don't need a blockchain. They've got their own block pile.
Oh my God. And R3 must be like R cubed.
That's great. I actually love that, because it's the core, instead of a chain, which is unbreakable or extremely strong, you're actually just kind of roping together these blocks, and maybe you'll untie them later. Maybe you chop it with a little machete for a second, cut it with your pocket knife, and then just tie a new one on. Just put a couple of extra knots on there, no problem.
We're a chain, they're a rope.
Yeah, very sad, very sad. Does anybody else have anything to add on the R3 admitting defeat? Nope. Okay, cool. So very cool. So I think that was a fun topic. Definitely some vindication for all the people in Bitcoin, for them finally admitting that they do not need a blockchain. So we got 145 viewers in the chat right now and watching the show. If everybody could go ahead and tweet out the show, Facebook out the show, let everybody know we're here talking Bitcoin. We're having a great time. We got a great set of panelists here, probably the best set of panelists I've had in a long time. So this is pretty awesome. Really glad to have you guys all here. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful Sunday. I think we can move on to the next topic here. I got a bunch of topics, but I kind of, with Samson on, I just want to jump right into the Segwit topic basically here. So we got with Segwit now signaling. Say something.
There's a Segwit topic. Okay, let's do this.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir. You bet. We're gonna give them the Samson 1-2, Samson 1-2-3 punch. So we got with Segwit now signaling closer to 30%. I checked, it was like 29 or something. So with Segwit now signaling closer to 30%, while Bitcoin Unlimited is down to around 15-16%, do we think Segwit has an even better shot now at being pushed through, or is Segwit doomed from the start? So we'll go with Samson first on this. What do you think?
Well, I'm starting to think that the miner activation you post on the list about user activated, but that sounds actually more likely to work than.
Here, hold on. Start over really quick because your internet flushed one solid flush and then it kind of resets. So just start over really quick.
Okay.
Yep.
So I don't know if you guys read the mailing list, but there is a post on there about user activated soft forks, and I think that might actually have a better chance to activate than the miner activation. Depoliticize things and put things back. Which is fine. Have you guys read that yet?
You broke up a little bit. Well, what was the thing you were talking about to read?
User activated soft fork.
I have not read about that yet.
Okay. I'm sure someone has here, right?
Yeah, I heard about it on Twitter, and I was trying to figure out what it is. But it makes sense now that you bring it up in context, as opposed to miner activation doing just you on the wallet side, maybe the client side.
I've been air gap for the past 2 weeks. Are you talking about individual full nodes or just wallet holders in general?
From the proposal, it looks like full node. So there would be a flag day, and then basically everyone running a node at that time, and then the miners can opt in.
So this is, if you look up on the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, there's an article called "Who Controls Bitcoin," which basically lays out this scenario on how we will ultimately end up doing upgrades, which is basically minority forks by full nodes whenever they decide that they actually need a feature. And Daniel does a really good job at breaking down why all that will happen.
Yeah, if the individual nodes are seen as stakeholders and the strongest stakeholders in any operational system, then them having the ability to make changes is the only logical way to present things.
They're just now learning that they can actually do stuff if they organize, like the full nodes in general. If me and other full nodes coordinate, we can, there's a lot more of us than there are miners, and miners have a lot more at stake if we force a fork and they don't follow along with it.
If we do it nodes first, I mean, then that gives the miners the option because they're stakeholders too. But then that gives an automatic rollback or kind of a bridge support situation where if so that does sound like an optimal path towards resolution.
So just going back to Segwit for a while, it's important to clarify there's a difference between miners and mining pools. So right now, it is not the miners holding things back. In general, miners, at least the ones in China, they're not that into all the technical stuff, and they're not following up on all developments and the benefits of whatever. They're just buying equipment to mine, and it's very simple. It's the pools that are not upgrading for various reasons, because it is a bigger upgrade than other versions. There's more complexity to it. I think it'll break merge mining for some of the pools that merge mine Syscoin and other coins. It's not that straightforward. That's why I think there is a delay, but then there's definitely a political aspect to it, and that's what I think is interesting about that user-activated soft fork proposal, because it removes that political aspect. It's not about politics, and it's not about a mining pool having to make a decision on behalf of the miners or the network. It's just the users will decide, and then they can follow. And they want to have that political clout, but that's a different topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, well, I'll have to put that link in the show notes. User activated soft fork, huh?
Yes, very interesting stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, and it's also seems to be gaining momentum. Segwit seems to be gaining momentum on Litecoin as well. Do you have any comment on that, real quick, Samson?
Oh, well, it's kind of stupid that we talk about it gaining momentum on Litecoin, and that just goes to the political aspect of it. Like a political battleground, a proxy battlefield for the scaling debate on Bitcoin, and it just makes you wonder: like, are there other Bitcoin forks that are going to try to activate Segwit, and those guys are going to try to block it on those coins too? And how far does it go? That's why it's kind of ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah,
If Litecoin activated Segwit,
good.
I would probably immediately start doing Litecoin development until it activated over Bitcoin for an indefinite amount of time.
I think I'd definitely buy some more Litecoin.
I mean, I wouldn't be so there's just two different aspects for it. There's the monetary aspect and the technical aspect. And if Litecoin had the technical qualities of Bitcoin and wasn't under, and one pool didn't control 51% of the mining, as a test network for building things out, I would have no reason to not use Litecoin. And with the larger block size, I mean, I could test a lot of stuff out.
Like if you play World of Warcraft and you're really, really competitive, or you're a mod maker, you want to, as soon as the test realm is up with the code that's going to be coming up next, you want to be in there developing, looking for bugs, and trying to port whatever you have in there as far in advance as you can of everybody else getting the stuff. I think that one of the good examples of this was really early on. Oracle had a custom contract with lots of different giant companies to integrate SOX policy compliance after Enron tanked by having it automatically in all their software. And since they were able to go in and write all their own software and then continue to write for their own stuff before everybody else had access to that software base, that put them massively ahead of the game. So yeah, I mean, if other places activate Segwit on other chains, definitely go there and do some work and figure out ahead of everybody else how to do stuff, because that's where the huge money rolls in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is the main value store. Do not get me wrong. There's nothing with a higher hash rate than Bitcoin. But I've been working on a library called Bitcoin Time. It's like Unix time, but it's time with a variance of when the last block was mined. And I've been working on an algorithm that basically takes into account that other blockchains exist with a certain hash rate and can also sign that a certain Unix timestamp has happened. Cross-chain stuff actually does have a utility, but I, as a speculator, don't recommend buying altcoins, I guess, relative to buying Bitcoin, just because if I was going to invest money in something, it would be in a long-term value store or something that's undervalued that I think is going to go up. And I think these altcoins have a utility for things like the Bitcoin Unix time thing, or for trying out things like Segwit. But I'm not going to launch a product, or some major company's not going to launch a product over Litecoin just in spite of the fact that they can't do it over Bitcoin. But they will probably start developing over it if it exists.
Right. So I think that for sure that's true. I mean, we don't get me wrong. Bitcoin is still going to always remain the internet of value. I think now that I posted this tweet out basically, but something to that nature. But I think that we're at the point now where we've crossed the threshold where Bitcoin will be the internet of value. We're going to have all these other awesome things like Litecoin and all these other awesome experiments, but they're all going to be able to be transacted over and be able to connect it to Bitcoin, because internet of value. It has so much security that, obviously it's not going to be able to be evolved very fast, but it is now single-handedly backing up the entire internet of value. So, Samson, any comment on that at all before we move on to the next panelist?
Yeah, I think altcoins will always have a place, but Bitcoin is the alpha and omega. I mean, it's always good. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but I think other coins are also good, because it just makes it harder for any entity or organization to stamp out cryptocurrencies, because minimalist, yes.
Bitcoin maximus, Bitcoin minimalist. I don't know which one I am, but I just know that
You're a
Bitcoin is
minimalist.
going to remain the okay. Because I'm going to say that Bitcoin will remain the internet of value forever. So I guess I'm a minimalist. So very cool. Let's go with
Bitcoin
Edward next.
maximalist is a Vitalik meme, by the way. It's a Vitalik made a meme called Bitcoin maximalist to make fun of the Bitcoin minimalists. So I always
And
do
it
the
was all
correction.
started. It's like it's like an attack from Vitalik on Bitcoin, really, if you ask me. The whole phrasing of maximus.
Google
But,
Bitcoin maximalist and you'll see
go-
the longest rant like ever. Just whenever you have spare time.
for sure. Edward, what do you think about Segwit getting closer to 30%?
So I was actually chatting. I co-host the Bristol Bitcoin meetup in the UK. We got another one Tuesday night. So if you're listening to this in Bristol, come along. But one of my friends that goes to it, called John, he's really clued up on the tech side, and we were chatting about possible reasons why Segwit has been sort of hovering around the 25% mark. And I used to work in a software house as well, so I know what it's like on the development side in terms of like restricted resources when you have a big workload. And we sort of discussed how it could be the fact that the overheads of development in order to get your systems ready for when Segwit is activated could be holding people off until they're more sure that Segwit is going to go ahead, because obviously you don't want to waste a lot of resources without thinking that it's going to be activated. So we come to the conclusion that if that is the case and the activation or the people signaling starts to creep up, then more and more people could start to work on and implement the changes needed as well. So in a sense, like signaling just begets more signaling, because people will be happy to put in the work in order to activate if they're more sure that the Segwit is going to be activated. But to be honest, I'm not so much focused on the tech side. But that was my thoughts on it. But I think there's a lot of panelists who probably know more on the Segwit side than me. I'm more focused on the investment. So I'll probably, because there's so many people, I'll just let someone else jump in here.
Awesome. Thanks, Edward. We'll go with Blake next.
Yeah, Segwit implementation is, I think, very, very important. There's a lot of people that are wanting to just basically increase the block size and then not implement separation of signatures. And that doesn't seem like a very good idea, because separating out signatures means there's a lot more space. And then it also means that we have not gone with a categorically inferior solution and actually bloated out the size of the blocks being stored so that less people are storing them. So I just think that when you look at the risks versus the benefits of Segwit and all that stuff, that it's important to have it implemented. I think that it's not crazy for people to be resistant to such a big change. And I think that hopefully soft activation through nodes that the miners can later jump onto, I think, is the least abrasive way to do it. And I'm excited to hear thoughts in that direction. I've been kind of out of the loop for a while. I talked a lot about Segwit when it first started becoming an option and when the soft fork version of it came out, but I've been kind of taking a back seat since then.
Sure. Let's go with Ansel next.
Yeah, I think the user directed soft fork is a pretty cool idea. I also think that once Bitcoin does scale in value first, so once we get to say $100 billion market cap, and maybe on Litecoin there's going to be Segwit for people to develop over there, the whole political landscape is going to be different. So a lot of people can say, oh, we're gridlocked right now, but just wait 12 months and it'll be totally different scenario. Well, I have no doubt that Segwit will be activated in the future.
It seems like people just don't understand how fast Bitcoin moves, because in 6 months from now, we could be in a completely different economic, political, technological area of Bitcoin. That people could just like look back at 6 months ago and, whoa, I remember all the way back then. That was like years ago, right? Nope, that was only a few months ago. I think that people don't quite understand that, where Segwit is only at 30% now, right? But I mean, in a single month or two, it could just jump right up before the end, because the perhaps consensus could be agreed upon. I think that just people underestimate that, how fast Bitcoin can change and how fast it can move. We'll go with Andrew next. Andrew or Gabriel, if you're not ready yet.
Right?
Yeah, Segwit.
Oh, 1 second.
Getting to be to 30%.
It'll get there or want it. The user or the nodes coming together and actually doing something would be a driver, but the elephant in the room is the fact that I don't think that Bitmain has an interest in activating it. I don't know why they wouldn't. I can speculate on it, but I know a bunch of Bitmain guys have some Ethereum holdings that are pretty significant. And they made a lot of money whenever we were arguing over the hard fork last year around December, and Ethereum started its rise. So I think there's money to be made anytime there's conflict. And if you can extend a conflict for an extended period of time, that gives you control. And the longer that you have control, you know, you can bet against or for Bitcoin in the name of making money. So I think that it would have to be a minority fork by full nodes that would immediately pull a large percentage of miners, and then the rest would follow. I don't think it's something that's just
it's kind of like
a
cliff, right?
Mm.
It's just gonna fall off eventually. It's gonna go like this, little bit, and then just fall off the cliff.
Well, the scary thing about it though is we have to do it. Like, we're going to have to eventually do a full node led fork that pushes people to do something they weren't originally going to do. But the risk whenever we do that is the journalists. They're going to want to write Bitcoin is dead, and their editors are going to put it on the main page of every site, and it's going to get pumped like we've never seen it get pumped before. And we're going to have actual technical stuff that we're going to have to deal with whenever we actually do the upgrade to Segwit, when we actually pull off a fork eventually. And I guess that's what I really worry about, is just like how many people are actually prepared to handle that when it happens. Because honestly, we could fork it and not tweet about it and they'd never know. So, I mean, like, that's what we're dealing with.
I don't know if the ETF could handle that either. So,
So I think it's something that we need to just we need to do it. But we need to have a strategy for when we do it, like what it means. Because some other people are going to immediately almost, it's decentralized and no one's obligated to do anything. But people on the opposition side are going to immediately expect magical results, which is why I'm saying things like people, if Litecoin were to have Segwit, you would have developers kind of moving over there to get their head start to have an answer to that. But if they're like a week off, long story short, I expect memes from space bias journalist types that Bitcoin is dead. And I expect that to confuse the JavaScript coders that tag onto Bitcoin to add something to their LinkedIn profile, which will then affect managers at certain companies into being confused about Bitcoin, which then it scares executives. So I would expect the price drop in conjunction with Segwit, but then like long-term, expansion atop the second layer.
Yep. Interesting. Very interesting. We got Gabriel Devine for the last person on this topic.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of different angles of this. I think it's great. I was under the impression that the upgrade would move forward quickly, but I was not. This is when it first went live, when the switch went live. But I was not really privy to the facts of the matter, where a lot of players in the ecosystem, a lot of technical elements which constitute it, are not set up to do Segwit. It's the most contentious upgrade probably that's ever happened in Bitcoin, and I think as such, it's a really amazing use case to see what happens, to see what kind of attacks there are, social attacks, to see what kind of legitimate arguments there are on both sides. We've got both. We've got a lot of FUD, especially from the big blockers who are against Segwit, but we've also got real arguments coming from that side too, from guys like Christoph Atlas, Jameson Lopp, giving them some airtime. I think there are genuine arguments for people that don't like it. I think that Andrew is absolutely correct that it will eventually go through, but it's really a great use case to see how the ecosystem adapts to controversy, adapts to contention. And it's great to see that the fee market is functioning as intended. It's great to see mining pools going out of their way to reduce the mempool buildup of the log of the transactions and to see that game theoretical idea or just the theory playing out in real life, where the miners are like, yeah, we're going to take a little bit of less profit on a few blocks for several days in order to help the whole ecosystem. It's in our interest to keep Bitcoin going and to keep Bitcoin healthy. So it's really great to see that. And now that I'm more well informed about the relatively large amount of development required to support Segwit around, across the board, from wallets to services, exchanges, as Samson pointed out, mining pools. I think it's fantastic that we're taking our time with it and also exploring other options like the node generated soft fork. I think it's and Andrew's pointing out of that article by Daniel. Daniel's articles in general are killer. Once again, I think that he could use a proofreader like many bloggers in the space, but the actual content is like, there's almost none better for those who are relatively well informed about Bitcoin up to extremely well. That area of knowledgeable, sort of knowledge-based people, Daniel Krawis's articles are totally great. And everyone should go to Nakamoto Institute who's curious about those pieces of writing, which are so intellectually rigorous.
Shout out to
very
Daniel for sure. He's been writing very, very, very high quality stuff for a long, long time for the space. Shout out to him. Keep going. You're a bad man, Majama.
To be clear, Ledger, which is a smart card deal, which is what your credit cards have. Am I there? Or am I frozen? Can you guys hear me?
No, you're here. Yeah, we got
Yep, we can hear you.
Ledger, Trezor, and KeepKey are Segwit ready, and then paper wallets are Segwit ready, which leaves it at an issue of miners, I guess, for the majority. Whenever we say the software isn't ready, and honestly, we could use another altcoin run like we had in 2013, because whenever the altcoins went all spammy, people actually started building dashboards and software for mining, and there was like an open source, push to actually build mining pool software, which has completely disappeared. I haven't ran my own mining pool since 2013, and that's on us, because if they don't feel obligated to write it, then we need to write it. And if we're not writing it, then we're not actually doing everything we can do to increase the decentralization of Bitcoin. We're just complaining.
Right.
So there is an actual need for better mining software for the pools. I don't believe that there's an open source solution today that gets the job done the way I would want it done. But Bitcoin, Bitcoin Core, Trezor, Ledger, KeepKey, they all have support. So yeah,
I think Blake, said it best when there's no perfect solution. I mean, this is the best that we have right now. And, Bitcoin Unlimited and Roger Ver and these other people, they want perfect solutions or something. And there is no perfect solution. Out of the choices, Segwit is by far the most tested and the most peer-reviewed source code that you can ever find when it comes to Bitcoin. But Samson, you have something?
I don't think they want perfect solutions. They just want, I don't know what they want, actually. They've never been able to articulate it. They just articulate what they don't want.
No, I agree. I agree with Samson, because the perfect solution would be you implement Segwit and then you hard fork to get rid of tech debt. I mean, and that would be without consensus and without completely ignoring risk. That would be the perfect solution. And it doesn't seem like that's what they're advocating for. They're advocating for a hard fork to bloat the block size, which is just it seems like action bias. At its worst. I don't know why.
It's money, dude. You can make money if the question is asked of you and you delay answering it for a year. You have a year of control, and that's a thing that if you've ever had control of the ADD group that is the Bitcoin community for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, imagine having that for a year. Imagine being able to direct the traffic and the flow and the thoughts of every Bitcoiner for a year. Imagine being able to get the entire core development team to fly to Hong Kong once every 6 months to meet up and just do nothing.
Well, that's a good point too, Andrew, because, from what we hear on various different interviews and stuff like that, the Bitcoin core team really just for the most part has their head down. and actually working. Like they're just working. If you look at the amount of commits since Bitcoin Limited has come out, right? It's Bitcoin Limited is tiny, and then Bitcoin Core is still just as it always was, tons and tons and tons of commits. So
well, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but there was almost a backroom miner hard fork right before the halvening, which I think is hilarious. There was a guy, I'm not gonna say who it was, that was spouting that he was gonna fork like this week, right before the halvening. He was worried the price was gonna drop. He didn't follow through with it, but there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that like people were actually worried around the halvening, and then nothing bad happened. And the same people that were worried still haven't adopted Segwit.
No, but there's like people saying they're gonna fork every, I say 3 months, and it sounds serious, but it never happens because the incentives are all against them from forking, and I think they realize it after they open their mouths.
What did Warren
I still
Buffett
love.
do about incentives? He said his entire career, Warren Buffett knew that incentives were important, but he continually, even at his advanced age, underestimates how strong incentives are in terms of behavior. And I mean, you can like or dislike Buffett, but I think that's a good quote.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I still love Samson's tweet, from a while back where he literally like mic dropped, basically. Like he was basically saying like, if Bitcoin Limited actually cared about their code and they actually cared about and thought that their code was better than core and really wanted to see this through, they would already just fork, but they haven't.
Yeah.
Right, Samson? Do you want to detail that a little bit more? Or?
Because they can't. That's the thing that like a lot of people message me and say, "Are you worried? Are you worried?" And I'm not really worried because, for one, like every single incentive in Bitcoin is to follow consensus. If you're a mining pool and you don't follow consensus, then you're going to be out of business in a very short time. If you're a miner, then you're even more worried about your income because you have to pay electricity bills. But every single part of Bitcoin is to entice you to follow the incentives, follow consensus. So that's why they won't fork. They'll say a lot because it's free, but forking is not free. That's the difference.
That's why I think the full nodes, the users, I think we will have to organize and be the thing that injects surprise into the network, because like you said, it's the innovators. I brought this up last time, the innovator's dilemma, innovator solution type situation. No major player is going to try to wreck their own business. Now, entrepreneur types, that's what they do. They force the dilemma on these guys. And in this case, those are the full nodes. The full nodes that have nothing to lose by forking it and have the most to gain by taking a lead can drastically change the ecosystem by forcing a hand. It's just like we have to organize, and we have to be ready for what I was saying earlier, which is going to be the reaction of our actions. There's going to be cause and effect. Whenever we do what we're going to have to eventually do, it's going to have side effects, and we're going to have to deal with those side effects. But like that's what happens when you go all in.
All right, I think we've covered this topic pretty well. Unless if anybody has any final things to say on this one.
I'll just comment really quick. So
Sure.
Gabriel was saying, there's a lot of work to be done on upgrades, but I think all wallets, I don't think there's a single wallet, a major wallet, that has not upgraded yet. And I think that's the area that really matters for Segwit. I think we're just being held up by the mining side at this time.
Yep,
So,
that's what it seems like. Because over 90% of the nodes are over 90% of the nodes are signaling, right? Or the last 1,000 blocks mined is over 80% still for core. So yeah, it seems like just the miners are, and it's important to say it too, that like people are saying like miners better remember who they work for, the nodes and the users, right? But really nobody works for anybody. And that's what makes Bitcoin amazing, is that we're all working for each other. And so we're all going to, that's why things take forever, because somebody's got to budge and somebody else budges. And eventually we all get budged the same way because of the incentive structure of Bitcoin. So these things can take time. But anyway, Samson, did you have time for one more topic, or did you have to leave right now?
I think I'm okay. I can still do it.
Okay.
I would love to hear your thoughts on
thank you so much,
PBOC.
sir. Yeah, that's what we're doing next. That's what we're doing next. So you bet. Andrew's with it. He can read my mind. So before we move on to the next topic, if everybody could go ahead and share out the show, tweet out the show, Facebook out the show, let everybody know we're here talking Bitcoin. We got over 170 people here live watching us and in the chat. We got Theo joining us just in the chat as well. So we got some WCN people joining us. So if you guys haven't joined the chat, go ahead and come on in and have a conversation with us. We're having a good time. Let's move on to the other topic here. We got the PBOC. So let me just scroll down to read what I actually wrote. So we got China announced that
let's have Andrew go first on PBOC.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Let's do it. Let's go Andrew and then Samson. Okay, so basically China announced that it's developing its own PBOC-backed digital currency, and we wanted to know, does it stand a chance or at all, or does it threaten Bitcoin at all? So we'll first go with Andrew DeSantis.
I think that, I mean, like I said it last time, PBOC does whatever the PBOC wants to do. There's nothing we can do to stop it. And the PBOC is not, they're not stupid. They're aware that Bitcoin exists. They've been aware for probably longer than a majority of us. And I think that if they're doing a coin, I mean, there was an article we did a while back on FedCoin at Bitcoin Magazine and what it would kind of look like. You know, not anywhere near what Daniel wrote, but it's, I said it last time. I am not in a position to talk on PBOC because I'm not there. Like, if it was a United States bank, I've probably called their technical support line and probably heard all kinds of details about how they work. A lot of banks, their tech support lines, they have Bitcoin posters up in the what's it called? The break room. They're nerds, some of them. But in terms of PBOC, one thing I've just always, you know, kept as a rule of thumb: be aware that they exist, be aware that they know what Bitcoin is, be aware they're not stupid, and be aware that, you know, if they say something and you're a company in China, you probably have to listen. I don't know because I'm not an executive in China, but like I don't see people trolling PBOC the way I trolled R3, if that makes sense. Like, so I just kind of think, and I said it last time, I said, if anybody knows who Satoshi is, it would be somebody at PBOC, just because of how much influence, and I may be over crediting them in Bitcoin, but I think that PBOC is kind of that entity that doesn't say much, but they listen.
I'm going to give you the French Stewart. I'm going to give you the French Stewart for what you just said about knowing who Satoshi is. That's a tall clay. No, but I get what you mean. I get the direction you're coming from when you say that.
Yeah, no, it's just, well, you know, there's earlier copies of the Bitcoin white paper out there, and there's like little fingerprints of Satoshi. The further back that you looked, the earlier on you got in, and then all of a sudden, as time has gone by, it's been harder to go backwards. So like if you're enumerating somebody as like a hacker or an ethical hacker, and you're trying to get like a breakdown of like what their systems look like, Satoshi is one of these things that, in my opinion, just disappears from the internet. And I think that PBOC was around early enough, and they have the resources to, you know, preserve snapshots of the internet for effectively what they're involved in. I've seen some of the software that larger companies can use. And just based on when they got in, when they became aware enough about Bitcoin to actually have a voice in it, and based on what I've, you know, talked about with other people, I would say that the People's Bank of China they're a lot smarter with what they do in Bitcoin than the American banks.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Go ahead, Samson. What do you think?
Oh, sorry. The question is about the PBOC coin, right?
Yep.
So from what we know, it's like we know nothing about it. It could just be an altcoin for all we know, right? I think the real devil is in the details. So can anyone mine this coin? Can anyone create a private key? And is that going to be recorded? Because the whole point of a digital currency, not a virtual currency, is that you own your actual coins, right? You have control of private keys. And again, I don't know, but I don't think that they're going to let anyone just create coins or mine coins or freely move coins, because there are capital controls and there are currency controls on the exchange rates too. So the question is it any different from, you know, RMB inside a bank account right now? And I don't see
if it's not a dynamic member multi-party signature, which is what Bitcoin is, and that basically means that all of us in this chat right now could generate our own keys and start participating in the network,
yeah,
then it's not a competitor to Bitcoin, which is why if there's no source out, it's about as relevant as Stellar. But that still doesn't change the fact that PBOC has a lot of Bitcoin under control just off of the authority that they have geographically, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. So it's really a question of what it will become, what's it going to look like if it does launch. But the properties are really what's going to matter. And I just don't see those properties being so different from, you know, digital RMB.
So it's like the hype behind No Man's Sky, where it's like, you know, No Man's Sky, we're gonna explore in space with these spaceships, and everybody's like, well, what if like space was infinite, and what if it was never the same twice? What if you could like meet up with your friends? What if the aliens were all great? And what we can do is we can speculate about the properties of the PBOC coin. Say maybe they're gonna use colored coins and actually tie some kind of, you know, value, profit and loss statement, like, you know, hard tie that to something that will be generation, like that you can generate, you know, wallets and keys outside, but they're also going to produce it, and there's going to be actual some kind of locked-in policy-enabled coin that can be traded everywhere to get in on their profits. Like that would probably be the best case scenario, but is that likely to be what they create? You know, almost certainly not. So I think that it's very, very almost entertaining to see what's the best possible implementation, and then what are they probably going to come up with, and then to see where, you know, how much distance there is between.
It is a strange thing, you know, like you said, Samson. I just don't see how this is going to be much different than a digital RMB. But I guess we have to wait for the details, right? So we'll see how that goes.
But it doesn't mean it can't work there. Look at Alipay. They're able to avoid transaction fees just based on market size and effectively just offer a centralized Bitcoin with a cheaper fee. I just think it's all interesting.
Yep.
It'd
be interesting to see. I think we can go with Ansel next, unless you have anything else, Samson.
Well, if you want to talk about Alipay, and you guys know, like there's Alipay and there's WeChat Pay. They're basically the two digital wallets, and they have digital RMB. So, you know, like Andrew was saying, it's really great. It's a great service. So how would the RMB coin compete with them, or would they need to integrate it? Because I don't see it doing much standing alone. I don't see a technology platform built by banks as being consumer friendly or take up on mass adoption like the Alipay and WeChat have done. So
so that's the problem. Like there's security and control over here, which you need both of, but you also need it to be out and available and have a market created around it, so it actually, you know, gets traction. And to try to bridge those two requirements is almost literally impossible. That's a very good.
I think Alipay is
absolutely
one of the largest.
So I think we can go with Ansel next. Ansel, go ahead.
Andrew, go ahead and finish your thought.
I was going to say Alipay, last time I checked, it's been a couple years, I think it's one of the largest wallets in the entire world. And it's because it has that direct integration into all of Alibaba's products. And then it takes that fee out, which is something that unless this PBOC coin or whatever it is actually integrated in with Alipay, at which point it would be a huge issue for Bitcoin if these were in any way compatible, technically. Like if you could go trade the PBOC coin for Bitcoin on some exchange, and all of a sudden this PBOC thing had a backdoor into Alipay, Bitcoin would have a lot of trouble with consumer adoption in China, in my opinion, just off of how much market penetration there is from the established wallets.
Well, actually, Bitcoin won't have consumer adoption because it's not a legal method of payment in China. So you can actually legally buy stuff like you can in Japan. It's a method of payment in Japan or transfer. But in China, you're not allowed to use it. You can only use RMB.
So you have to do it as an investor or results of mining?
People are buying it as a store of value or as a speculative thing to trade. but no one is actually using Bitcoin except for, some coffee shop maybe there to just take it as a novelty.
That's so
Right.
interesting.
So it seems to be more like a store of value right now for most people, I think, around the world. And yeah, but it seems like it's going to act like a store of value for, people for like China and for people who aren't adopting it in mass yet, like the first world countries. It's more of a store of value. But of course, in countries like Venezuela, we see them definitely using this as a currency, and like to like get their groceries from another country and then walk it across the border. So I mean, right? So it's great that it can work as both of these things. So you
have a lot of people that are in areas that didn't have access to a lot of this stuff, like working for Amazon, Mechanical Turk, getting Turk credits through Amazon, getting Amazon credits, trading those for Bitcoin, getting Bitcoin to be able to buy the stuff that they need. And I mean, that seems like a lot of layers to go through, but for somebody whose best option to make money with like a 16th as profitable as that, like that's amazing that different conversions of currency over these kind of traditionally really tough remittance crossover areas. I mean, that's really cool. The value add as far as that goes and how much it affects those people's lives is hyper massive.
And it also seems like if everybody around China is going to be taking Bitcoin, right? Like everybody around China, including Japan and everything like that, then eventually, right, they have no choice, right? But that's the long-term game. But because they'll all have it in China, but they can't. So it's just
people have a choice.
Primed and ready to go. So.
Yeah, but business and infrastructure build out in China can be delayed by what the government does. So I mean, I wouldn't be too gung ho about that. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the citizens are eventually going to do what they want to do. But business build out and getting a lot of businesses accepting in large, consumer-esque ways. I mean, that the chip breaks on that. So hopefully they ease up at some point.
What Samson said about the only like a coffee shop using it there, I think it's quite fascinating that so China, we manufacture a lot of our chips over there, we ship them over here, and Bitcoin, because it's like literally an arms race for silicon, you make it over there, you ship it across the street, you start running it immediately, and you try to find out who has the most power or the cheapest power. We didn't have the manufacturing capability in the United States, so we didn't do it. So instead, I've lived off Bitcoin for 2 years, like straight before, not right now, because I got hit with a hack the other day, ransomware type thing in January. But before that, I was living off Bitcoin, and the mechanisms I came up with in every city I've lived in Canada and the United States to be able to live off of Bitcoin and for it to not be a hassle. Very weird. It's like a standardized thing I did for myself, but it works. It was possible to do. If you lived in China, I imagine the equivalent of me in China would have been racking up mining equipment and picking other alts to start mining whenever they weren't able to mine Bitcoin. And it's just very interesting that the proximity to the manufacturing plant determines a whole lot about how you grow as a Bitcoiner over time. Which, I don't think there's anything special about someone in China or the United States that makes them more likely to be a crazy person like me routing through 10 different payment mechanisms to be able to use Bitcoin anywhere, and somebody in China that's just buying equipment that literally tries to brute force hashes all day. If we both had the same equipment, we would probably have a drastically different, personality. Me and my equivalent in China, we'd be sort of like the same person, but instead, just the proximity to the manufacturing plant has drastically changed me and that person's life.
But your doppelganger would also be all hopped up on subsidized power though too, so you have to take into consideration that source of evil corruption.
It's not evil that the power is cheap that flows down when the water goes down K2 and the hydroelectric, wheels spin. You have overflow. I don't think it's as corrupt as people would say it is. No more corrupt than what's going on in the United States with miners.
I was being facetious.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say the power in China is much more decentralized actually than the power over in America, I believe. So maybe
have you seen the BTCS stock?
Maybe Samson can
$30,000.
BTCS.
BTCS is not at 5 million. It's at 32,000. The guys that bought Spondoolies, they're literally trading at 32 grand. I have no idea what's going on there, but I don't know any other miners anymore in the US.
Yeah, the Bitcoin shop.us. What was the name of the guy that ran that? I've met him at a couple of different conferences. I can't remember right now. Damn it.
I forget it as well, but he just is the guy that bought the company.
See if Samson, do you have anything else to comment on this, Samson, before we go to Ansel?
No.
Okay, cool. Ansel, what do you think about all this?
Okay, this is a fascinating topic. I don't know if I have too much to add because it's been covered so well, but I do want to kind of point out one thing that I think is interesting about these Fed coins and stuff. When we first went to fiat and central banking in the 20th century, we had a bunch of hyperinflations, or at least a really bad one in Europe, and they didn't do it very well. So as these guys are doing these Fed coins or the PBOC coins, are they going to be able to handle their economies? Are their economies going to spin out of control? And how is that, especially when you have Bitcoin right there to fall back on? So, and anytime you have these type of experiments, it's just going to fuel Bitcoin's fire, I think.
Very true. Very true. It really does, I think, fuel the fire. Every time they give attention, to comparing anything like Bitcoin, right? It's the Bitcoin still gets the publicity. So very interesting. Go with Gabriel on this. Gabriel D. Vine, what do you think about PBOC coin?
It's hard for me to imagine a scenario like Andrew describes, but it's a much more fall on Samson's side of the fence, where it's essentially digital renminbi. I don't really see. I mean, the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's open and open source. It's decentralized. If you make a blockchain for your national coin, you're just giving a few developers jobs. Just Mint Chip, Canada's Mint Chip. Yep. If anyone wants to know about about government of GovCoin, just research Canada's Mint Chip. That's where, in my opinion, where every project like that will end up.
Let me see.
Absolutely. That didn't turn out so well for Canada. So yeah, I'll let the viewers Google that. And finally, wait, do we go with Edward already? If not, okay, go with you, Edward, and then Blake. So first, Edward, go ahead.
So I'm going to refer back to the first video I ever did on my YouTube channel again, which was 9 reasons why Bitcoin will outcompete private blockchains. And one of the points was currency attributes. So this has already been touched on by everybody, but it all goes down to what are going to be the attributes of these currencies created, not just by the PBOC. It could be the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, who are working on something called RS coin, which I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day, but there's all these different projects in hand, but it all comes down to currency attributes. So Bitcoin is really popular because I actually tweeted this yesterday. I said, people still don't get it. Bitcoin is a competing monetary policy. I said, states can create all the crypto they want, but if the attributes are bad, it's going to lose to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's popular because, one, it's got low inflation, it's finite, there's no counterparty risk, and there's no centralized control. Those are all things that in our current geopolitical and global climate, people want. Now, if a central state comes along and somehow manages to create a cryptocurrency which is secure, which even that's questionable whether they can actually do that, but if they can do it and make it secure, the thing you have to understand about governments is they absolutely love fiat currency because they can extend their spending and promises beyond what they would be able to do with something like Bitcoin, which has a fixed supply. So for decades, like, governments absolutely live off of fiat currency. So it's likely that if they create a cryptocurrency, one, it's going to be centrally controlled. Two, it's going to be a fiat currency where they can issue as much as they want. Three, that means it's going to be inflationary, and there's going to be a ton of counterparty risk. So in my opinion, even if they got millions of people using these currencies, they're going to quickly realize that side by side with Bitcoin, it's going to be much preferential to hold Bitcoin. And another reason that's going to drive this, let me just read this out for you, okay? So the other day, someone posted up like the last 5 years performance in Bitcoin. So imagine that you're holding a state fiat currency here, which isn't going up in value because they can just create as much as they want. And look how it's going to compete against Bitcoin. So last 7 days, Bitcoin up 9%. last 30 days, 20%, last 6 months, 85%. Last 1 year, up 150%. Last 2 years, up 350%. Last 5 years, up 25,000%. Now imagine if you're sitting there holding a fiat currency issued, or a fiat sort of cryptocurrency issued by a state, and you're looking at someone next to you holding Bitcoin making much bigger returns against those cryptos, and you're bound, the people are bound to switch to Bitcoin because the economic incentive is there for them to do it. And not only that, the other thing that all these, I mean, if they do manage to create state cryptocurrencies, I mean, it could have the beneficial effect of actually getting people used to the concept of cryptocurrency, and then showing them one that's way better in the likes of Bitcoin, or has better attributes. So in my opinion, like, it's dead on arrival. Like, they can try it, but if the attributes aren't as good as Bitcoin, it's just going to lose.
Dead on arrival, I think, is right, Edward. It's just like Mintcoin, right? I think they're just going to be dead on arrival.
One thing that I think people don't realize, particularly with the mint chip type situation, is if you look at this credit card and you look at this right here, which is a Bitcoin wallet, same protocol, same exact thing. So whenever Mint Chip put out a smart card, and whenever your credit card companies give you a new card that's upgraded, and whenever you buy a ledger, or whenever you get a hold of a smart card and you modify it yourself, you're using the same exact technology in the exact same way. There's fundamentally no difference between a Bitcoin hardware wallet using smart card technology and a credit card, other than the fact that one is backed in a centralized mechanism and the other is backed by a decentralized mechanism. And I think that's like a really important distinction to make, because people can announce that they're launching something new, but it effectively can just be a credit card that you can plug into a USB port.
It's the same thing. Same
it's
thing.
Just like saying that you were doing USB sticks now. And if you trade it, it's just like trading USD. And I guess what I mean by that is fiat-based currencies. You can make paper wallets. You can go to a bank or an ATM and print out your dollars or whatever you want to get. You can get your paper wallets. But at the end of the day, it's literally just like monopoly money. You're printing out something they can arbitrarily print more of, and the hardware wallet for authentication and for like using, same thing as Bitcoin from a security standpoint and from a technical standpoint, down to the fact that the same guy that owns the patent on this is getting paid by both people. So like, it's just a matter of philosophy. There's nothing different about it.
Very important definitely important to make the distinction, because people, these governments, they're going to continue, even like this topic, the PBOC, they're going to continue to announce these things that they claim are new, right? That are new, and then maybe can compete with Bitcoin, but nope. It's the same credit card based crap. So very good point, Andrew. Thank you for that.
It also runs Java, by the way. Only runs Java.
Oh God. Oh God. Okay, I think we can ask Blake, and then I think we'll close it out after Blake. So Blake, what do you think about this topic?
Well, I want to touch on what Renegade Investor said, because it was a very, very interesting point in terms of, like, let's look at the other mediums of exchange with which Bitcoin competes directly. And other mediums of exchange are fiat. That's a huge disadvantage, but they're not just fiat. They have a monetary policy which refers to, you know, how much are we going to make and exist and distribute and all that good stuff. But also nation states have fiscal policy, and the fiscal policy of a nation state can be, you know, either really, really, really conservative or really, really, really like Greece. And basically, what we're competing with is not just a nation state that does their stuff pretty well. We're competing with stuff like the euro, which is unified monetary policy without unified fiscal policy. And if you can think of like everybody in your house, like let's see, with like lots of roommates and you're all completely different, it's like, let's all pool our paychecks and then not agree on what we're going to spend our money on or not. And somebody's like, oh, just boozing it up, lighting the carpet on fire and shit like that. Like, that's not going to work at all. There's no reasonable person to be like, yeah, let's set things up like that. So when you have things like the euro that actually operate like that versus things like Bitcoin, where they have really, really, really good, aggressively programmed deflationary monetary policy that's not hamstrung by any fiscal policy, I mean, that would lead me to want to be very, very bearish in my investments in things that have to compete with all that nonsense versus things that work really, really, you know, fundamentally, really, really, really elegantly, like Bitcoin, and that don't have to deal with so much different stuff. I mean, yeah, we have our, you know, tech issues to discuss and work over, but those are so infinitely easier to solve, in my opinion, than the issue of trying to get giant nation states to agree on what they should do with their monetary and fiscal policy when they all disagree. So I think that knowing how much of a mess the legacy systems are really kind of informs people's desire to have exposure to new systems that, like I had mentioned before, are different monetary policies. They're not just a different investment. It's a different complete stack from the top down, unit of value, all derivatives they're under. You're moving over to a different stack. So that's very interesting. Bitcoin still exists with all the other stuff, and the market cap can be pushed around, but there's something awesome about moving over to something that's so fundamentally different from top to bottom.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we see these, these economists that are on TV just completely not understanding Bitcoin, saying all these ludicrous things like only the people with the right algorithms can create these coins out of thin air, and all of these ridiculous things about how Bitcoin was actually originally invented by the dark market. And just like all these crazy things, like it's just so far above their head that I think, man, it's going to be taking at least a couple more years before any type of mainstream economist actually starts understanding, because there are some now that are moving more towards it. There are some talking heads that are like not completely disavowing it anymore, and they're actually like, because it's sticking around so long, but still there are more mainstream economists than not that are still dissing Bitcoin and still not understanding it. And so we're going to see this evolve, and it's up to shows like this and people like you guys to hopefully continue educating people and see where we can get this thing to go. Because at the end of the day, it's not even up to people like you and me, man. It's up to the people who need Bitcoin, people that would die otherwise, right? Like, because Bitcoin's going to save lives all across the world. So very interesting stuff. So I think we can close it out unless anybody has any other thing to say on this topic.
One last thing, I think.
Nope.
Okay, we got a couple of people. Let's go with Ansel first.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are people that are going to want to adopt this, right? We have this small little group right here, and we're very, very smart. We know what's going on in the world. We know the technology that's out there. But for a lot of people that are waving the American flag, they like their dollar bills. They like what they are. They like their chains, I guess you could say. So there are a lot of people, and I'm sure China's the same way, that are patriotic and they want a PBOC coin to be successful. So if this does happen, then I'm sure it will be somewhat of a success. In the end, though, it'll end up hurting those people. So you can see as we transition kind of outside of this nation state sort of thing, these people are going to be financially ruined. And the people that choose the independent way or the individual way there with Bitcoin, they're going to be more successful. So everything's kind of, I don't want to say self-fulfilling prophecy, or it's almost been written that these nation states are going away, and people that like us in this room here are probably going to be very successful versus those nationalistic patriots out there. That's all.
Very true. Samson, did you say you had something else as well? No. Okay, then that was Andrew. Did you have something else to add? He's on mute.
Andrew, you're muted, by the way.
Yeah, the other interesting thing to mention is it's not just the wallets that are using the same tech, but it's also the back end. What powers the United States, our financial, our economy, is powered by a bunch of people running KDD+, K, Q, I guess K4. This is a language that very few people know. It's an APL-based language from a guy out of Toronto, and every single high-frequency trader uses it. And what they basically do is they arbitrarily calculate numbers, and we're talking billions of rows of numbers per second. Like, the K language is insane. It's the fastest one, period. It's literally the opposite of mining, but you're doing the same thing. You have a huge power bill and you're running loops over and over and over and over again against the network, and you either make money or you don't. And in the case of a guy doing something with K, someone else adds a new algorithm to the HFT game and it screws up your algorithm and you might tank instantly. In Bitcoin, you might get hit with a ransom. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, the tech is the same in terms of like every aspect of it other than the Bitcoin aspect. The only difference is individual sovereignty versus, a centralized control mechanism where someone tells you that you get these dollars and your identity is tied to the fact that you're paying taxes or your social security number, or you generate this key and you decide what pointer points to that key, and that essentially becomes your name. You can look in the Sovereign Individual, which came out in like 1999. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is every single thing that's happened in the past couple of years was literally predicted by this book.
97.
97, and it literally predicts the arising of Bitcoin in the book in 97, before we even knew what Bitcoin was. And there's a whole thing on like nationalism and stuff like that. I think that the nationalists, they get tired of having a joke currency, and they collectively want their individual sovereignties to become families, and the units of families want to develop communities, and the communities create states, and the states cooperate, and they have this nationalist drive to be better as individuals and then as a whole. And I think it actually goes hand in hand. I think your nationalist states or nation states are the ones that go to Bitcoin first, as opposed to being the ones that reject it. Just because, you know, giving power back to the individual is something that Bitcoin does. And somebody that's actually a nationalist, the only reason you would want to be a nationalist is I just want to be able to raise a family on land and have my property ownership acknowledged. That's it. I could care less about pretty much anything else. It's just property ownership. And that literally goes hand in hand with Bitcoin. And in fact, like as we rewrite laws or modify them going forward, we should think of land and Bitcoin in a similar way. And I was reading about this group of people in Japan back in like 400 or whatever, called the Sohei, or Sohei, the Sohei. And what they were is like a group of warrior monks that would keep the military and government in check whenever they lost their way, and they would intimidate other like fields of Buddhism. And I'm looking at this and I'm sitting here like, well, this sounds a lot like
Cryptographers.
Bitcoiners. Yeah, it sounds like a bunch of cryptographers that are literally sitting there keeping governments in check while they're losing their mind. And I think that's what you have to have, is just literal warrior monks during the transition. And people that realize that there's nothing different. They're mining, we're mining. I have a chip, you have a chip. You put it on a card or not, there's nothing different about it.
It's interesting through history. In Ireland for thousands of years, there were tuaths, and the tuaths would describe what various people needed and stuff like that. And it was all voluntary and based on commerce and value. And if you blew your reputation, then you had to leave and stuff. And I think that what Ansel said was correct, that these people that try to just pile on to these big generalistic sources of value, that's too opaque. I mean, it requires, you know, a commitment to yourself, to your family, to individual differences that make us all different. I mean, scarcity and individualism are really kind of married together, and that's where the value is. When you have people that have their own talents, their own dreams, their own sparks, their own differences, they create value, and then those people coming together and filling in the gaps where people have different skills, that is what makes hyper fast, you know, growth. So I think that Ansel is correct. The people that observe and stick with the individualist tradition will find themselves catapulted ahead of everything else in ways that collectivists find their ways unable to compete with.
So let me read you guys these 4 lines and then I'll shut up because it's so important.
Go ahead,
I highlighted these like a year ago and I've never told anybody this. So this is 1997, page freaking 25. It's in the new millennium. Millennium. In the new millennium, I was thinking millennial. In the new millennium, cyber money controlled by private markets will supersede fiat money issued by governments. Interesting. Unlucky individuals will find themselves singled out and held for ransom in an almost medieval fashion. I've seen that happen before. Businesses that offer services that facilitate the realization of autonomy by individuals will be subject to infiltration, sabotage, and disruption. That sounds familiar. Governments will violate human rights, censor the free flow of information, sabotage useful technologies, and worse. Jack Dorsey hasn't killed me yet, but my tweets don't do anything. And then Western governments will seek to suppress the cyber economy by totalitarian means. The book literally lays everything out before it all happened. And there's 200 more pages of this step plan in chapter 10 of how things will go down. That's how I was able to make money off of Trump. That's how I realized the Ethereum Classic stuff was going to go up whenever everyone thought that Ethereum was like going to kill it. If it's not in the book, it probably isn't going to happen. And I'm not saying this is like some holy book I'm just saying, read the book and it'll freak you out.
I don't
That's all
want to
I'm saying.
oversell it. I don't want to oversell it, but if it's not in the book, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
The book
No,
has
no,
been
that-
very scary for the past like year and a half for me.
That-
I
that's
look
a
at the
great
book
book.
and I'm like, shit, this is gonna be bad.
That's a great book. I think everybody needs to read that book, The Sovereign Individual. So I think we can end it with saying that Bitcoin is the warrior monk that is going to keep these governments in check, right? So very awesome. That's right. Very cool. So thanks so much, guys, for joining us, man. We had a great time. We talked for about 2 hours or so. So this was great. I really want to thank the panelists for joining us and for donating their time to the show. We really appreciate it. We really have a lot of people watching us. We got over 180 people watching us now. So had a great time. So let's see where we can find everybody. First, we'll go with Samson. Where can we find you, Samson?
I'm on Twitter. My handle is Excellion, EXCELLION. And yeah.
Did you have a good time, Samson? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks, guys.
All right, awesome. We'll have to have you on again, man. Super appreciate it for coming on. Edward, where can we find you? Maybe we can't find Edward.
Yeah, so I have a website.co.uk.
Say it one more time. You
Can
had
you hear
a
me
little
okay?
lag after you
Yes.
unmuted. There was just a second there, so go ahead again.
So, yeah, so I've got my website, renegadeinvestor.co.uk. That's where I post all my own content, and I also aggregate a lot of the best content I see around the Bitcoin community, so it makes it easy to access a lot of high quality content. I've also got my YouTube channel linked from my website, which is just Renegade Investor. I just put out a video called 10 Reasons Why Bitcoin Will Destroy All-Time High Prices in 2017. So that's just gone through about 22,000 views. So if you're new to Bitcoin, definitely check that out. It gives a good overview of all the fundamentals. And I've also got my Twitter account at SharkyBit. And I've got loads more content in the pipeline, including a mini documentary. So should have more content out in the next week or next 2 weeks.
Awesome, man. You guys got to watch that video, man. How Bitcoin's going to just destroy in 2017. Edward lays out all the fundamentals, just one by one, just pure logic, just awesome stuff. Everybody needs to watch this
Yeah,
video.
shout out to the content.
It is awesome, dude. Because there's not enough people, not enough Bitcoin content creators, and Edward Renegade Investor is definitely one of those putting out just awesome quality content, and he's got a British accent to boot, so everything sounds great. So very cool, very cool. Thanks for those videos, Edward. Gabriel Divine, where can we find you, sir?
I'm a self-facilitating media node. You can find me at trashbat.cock. I'm on Twitter at Gabriel Divine. Come on by, say hi, shoot me a line. I'll engage you even if you're being a dumbass. It'll be fun.
Awesome. That was just way too good of an accent too. Very, very cool. Blake Anderson, where can we find you, man?
Hey, find me. I'm on Twitter at Bitcoin Blake. I'm also a regular contributor to the World Crypto Network. This show, the Bitcoin Group, which is on Fridays live at 5 p.m. Central Time. I almost feel like I went from that show and walked around the World Crypto Network hallways, and now I'm bursting onto this show. So it's fun. I mean, this is going to be a big year for the World Crypto Network. We're kind of adjusting standards, getting things up to that maximal pressure onto the bullshit media outlets mode. So look for a good year from the World Crypto Network, and I'm going to be there working hard and trying to put out good information for the entire community, as always, for free, with no giant sponsors or anybody to be like, hey, we didn't like what you said about that. So continue to watch the WCN.
Absolutely. And, the WCN really is cranking out videos. So if you guys haven't yet, please subscribe to the World Crypto Network channel. You'll find Blake and a bunch of other WCN people, as well as Gabriel and stuff. So, and even I up here on the Bitcoin group once in a while. So definitely subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down on what you guys think. Ansel, where can we find you?
I do a podcast, Bitcoin and Markets, bitcoinandmarkets.com. You can also contact me on Twitter at Ansel Linder. And I just want to say, nice to meet Samson. This was a thrill for me because you do great work in the space. And Vortex, this show I think has really good content, and especially today was awesome. It's the uniquest show out there. So good job and keep it up.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ansel. And, he's got a podcast too. Ansel's got a podcast, bitcoinandmarkets.com. Definitely hope everybody can check that out. He's now got a Patreon account as well that you can get even more content with from subscribing to that. So definitely take a look at that, bitcoinandmarkets.com. Andrew DeSantis, where can we find you, sir?
I guess 21.co/ATD. I kind of quit the internet. So if you need me, I'm there.
How much do we have to pay to reach you?
$20, and it's donated to a good cause, so it's all good. But yeah, I probably won't answer you on. I definitely won't answer you on Twitter, and I change my phone number pretty regularly. So like I'll be here in 2 weeks, I guess. But otherwise, 21's a good spot to hit me up at.
You have to understand, people, Andrew is the ghost in the machine. You will never find Andrew, as you can tell from his bunker behind him there, his Faraday cage. So thanks so much, guys. We had a great time talking Bitcoin. We had over 180 people at one point, so just awesome. Thanks so much to everybody in the chat. Thanks so much to everybody here and the panelists. We're going to be back again, of course, in 2 weeks. And until then, I guess just keep talking Bitcoin, guys.
Keep talking
Thanks
Bitcoin.
so much for joining us.
You.
Bitcoin for life.
Let's talk
Thanks,
blockchain.
guys. Oh, God, no. All right. Thanks, guys.